Hey, I'm Michael. Trends Entrepreneur in Action is where we dive into the lives of entrepreneurs who master the four F's: finance, fitness, family, and fun. Our mission? Help you thrive in business and life. Today's guest is Nate Ritter, seven-figure co-founder and the mind behind Founder Labs, a guided mastermind for entrepreneurs. I think you're going to love it. Welcome to Entrepreneur in Action. So let's just jump right into it. Hey, Nate, how are you? Good to see you.
Good. Yeah, it's nice to be here. It's good. I love it. I love that you're doing a podcast. I'm excited for this.
Oh, thanks a lot. Yeah, me too. It's something I've been excited about for a while, and I'm really glad to have you here. Hopefully, we'll be able to explore some of the parts of you that people don't always see, and people can get to know you better, and I'll get to know you better, and we'll get to learn about how to sort of optimize for as an entrepreneur, optimize for the four F's: finance, fitness, family, and fun, which is what it's all about here. The Entrepreneur in Action podcast. So let's start. If you could introduce yourself, like tell me about your business, like how'd you get into that and what drives you?
Let's see. Do you want history or do you want just my current business?
First, what you're doing now, and then we can go do some history.
So currently, I am a business coach and fractional CXO. So that includes Chief Technology Officer and Chief Operating Officer. And then I also run Founder Labs, which is a private guided mastermind group for entrepreneurs.
That's awesome. And I'm a part of Founder Labs, and I love it. And I think that it's been amazing for me, and I see other people getting great results too. So I really appreciate you doing what you're doing. And tell us, I mean, how'd you get there, Nate?
So yeah, the kind of longer story is that I kind of started a long time ago. I started with business as the idea, and I always loved business. I liked making money. It was just a fun game. When I realized that I could do that in so many different ways, that the world kind of just opened up. It wasn't just get a job. There was like, oh, how do you provide value to people that they want, and how do you deliver things in the moment that they want them. I took a path through engineering, and mostly because I saw a friend of mine who made money off of a computer system that I think he got it for free. He swapped out a power supply and sold it for $800 in a weekend. And I was like, how did you do that? Please tell me. And he's like, do you know what a hard drive is? I said, nope. And so we started with that. And
how old are you this
time? I was maybe 17, I think, at that point. Yeah, early days. This was like 1993, I think. I took that and turned it into a wholesale business. And so I was wholesaling computers, and I built one of the first websites that was kind of a customize your own computer system, and I'll come deliver it, and kind of the Gateway and Dell sort of situation before there was Gateway and Dell. But I didn't do that in mass. And then I was paid to learn how to code by one of the contractors to the attorney generals in Washington State. And I coded their website for them while I was at a little college, and when, back in that day, doing things that I shouldn't have been doing in college. Like, I don't think we were supposed to have access to the internet and things like that, but I kind of weaseled my way into getting access, which is a whole nother story in and of itself. And then, yeah, it turned that into a retailing company for retailing hardware, and then internet service. I worked for an internet service provider and so forth, but basically that was all engineering. And then I went through like coding for the next 20 years or whatever it is. And at the end of the day, became a chief technology officer for a hotel brokerage company. I ran an agency that did web development, a seven-figure agency for about 10 years out of San Diego. And yeah, now today I help other entrepreneurs kind of get started. So I've always kind of roamed around in the space of helping entrepreneurs create their thing, building my own companies and selling those, or occasionally coming on as an executive and helping out the company to get to the place where they want to get to next, usually some sort of exit.
So how'd you get, so it sounds like this is really cool. I really love hearing your background. And like, so it sounds like you started with like a kind of a hacker approach, like, hey, there are these computers that I can like put together for people. They'll pay me money for this. Oh, I can get access to the internet somehow through my college, just like finding a way through like force of will to make things happen. And then what do you feel like was the transition from that sort of hacker approach to getting you into like concrete things like selling a business or having a role as CTO? Like, what was the transition from hacker to like legit entrepreneur?
I don't think there's been a transition. Honestly, I don't think I've transitioned at all. I think it's still I'm hacking. So like, I think it's just nobody ever like offered me a certificate in any of that stuff. In fact, I went to try to work at Qualcomm one time, and I talked to a friend of mine who was who was in HR, and she said, I was like, okay, I'm done with this whole agency life. I want to go like do something for a big company, work for a big company, and do the traditional track. And she said, okay, well, what have you learned lately? And I was like, well, I mean, I learn stuff every day. And so like, what do you mean? And she goes, no, I mean, like, what certificates have you gotten? I'm like, I don't get certificates. Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you have to prove that you've learned something. I'm like, no, I don't. Like, nobody has to prove anything. You just go learn stuff and then you apply it. I'm like, and she's like, that's not how it works. I'm like, I'm done. Just literally just walked out. Like, I can't do this. If I know where that's headed, and that's not who I am. So to answer your question, I don't think that I've ever actually transitioned. I think it's always just been you work to figure out the problems. Like, can you troubleshoot? Can you like see the problem and get through it and like find a way to get through it? And then, find out if that works for you. And if it doesn't, try something new. That's always been my MO. I don't know that's changed necessarily even becoming a CTO. It was just, doing that with people more than technology, actually. That's probably the difference. So how do you solve problems that are more people problems at an executive level than technology problems? So
Okay, yeah, that's neat. I mean, I am seeing like this through line of like, it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of like authority, ooh, which I really resonate with my life. Like, I
100%.
completely
Yeah.
understand that approach. So yeah, having a boss has always felt like one of the real things that really pulls me down energetically. I don't know if it's the same for you.
Yeah, I think nowadays I was lucky enough to have a CEO at one point who, when we were talking about working together, um, he specifically had said, like, I'm not looking for somebody who's going to be an employee. I'm looking for somebody who's going to be a partner. And that resonated with me, and I was like, "Good," because that's truly what I want. Like, I don't wanna come in and have a boss. Like, we might have that relationship and hierarchy because we have to, because somebody has to make a decision, right? But generally speaking, like, I'm coming in to run a department in the way that I feel should be best run, and I'm there to solve problems um, and to create solutions. And I think that that's always been, like, kind of my MO. Um, I didn't go create lemonade stands because my parents wanted me to. I didn't go franchise the local newspaper route because my parents want or somebody told me to. I did that because I thought, oh, I can maximize this. Like, I did things that were because I wanted to, because I thought, oh, I could make money and I could improve other people's lives. So I'm just going to go do those things. And so I've always felt weird when I got into a position, like I was an engineer at one point, and I saw a need in the company, and I was like, this thing should like we're failing here. Like, we need to like solve for this because this is actually going to come back and bite us later. Like, and I'm seeing that happen on a daily basis, even though I was an engineer. And so I kind of migrated towards like a community manager at one point. And my boss said, like, hey, we hired you to be a coder, not a community manager. And yeah, I think he literally used the term code monkey. And I was like, yeah, I think that's pretty much it here. So
Digits for hire.
yeah, I was like, yeah, we can just agree to that, we're done. But the thing about it is I was like, but there's this need over here. And I could agree, like, if we can get on the same page as a company and like, if that's truly like where we need to go and not worry so much about that, fair. But I felt like it was a really big problem for the company. And so I wanted to go work on it. And I had a boss who was telling me, like, no, you can't go do that, even part-time. He was like, no, I don't even want you taking up 5 hours of your time. Like, don't even bother with it. And I was like, but you're not hiring anybody, you're not solving this problem. And I have a hard time like seeing things like that happen in a company and not doing something about it. And so it's really hard for me to have somebody, sit over the top of me and tell me like, this is exactly how it's supposed to be done, when I don't feel like I have any authority or really responsibility. And like, I had equity in that company, and I couldn't make it better, right? So I think that's hard. And of course, there's this like, he knew better, and maybe I should have stuck to my lane. That's possible, but that definitely doesn't fit into my MO either. Like, I feel like I know enough now, at least, to get dirty and do things right. So maybe I didn't then. Maybe he was right. I don't know. But anyway, that is the through line for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe it sounds like he wasn't even open to discussion around it. And maybe, if you've been able to express in some way, like, hey, this is the problem I'm seeing. If I don't do it, can we find somebody to do it? Like if we really need me to do something else, can we delegate this in a way that it gets done? Yeah, like being able to, it sounds like that conversation wasn't even possible at the time, which is super frustrating because, as you said, you're a partner in the company. You have equity, you know, you want to make the company better. You see it, you're there in the trenches. He might be at a different level of what he's seeing, not seeing what you're seeing, and not able to, not open to hearing it. It's super frustrating. It's super
Yeah.
frustrating. And I really understand that. I really
Yeah.
understand that.
It can be, and he might have had a different perspective on it, and he might have been right. Like I said, like it's
Yeah,
possible, but I think what, like you said, like the through line for me and my kind of like attitude and belief, I guess, is that, you know, inspiration for and innovation can come from anywhere. So, you know, even though I wasn't necessarily like the boss there, and he was right to tell me what to do, and I should have listened to him. At the same time, like I think that it's possible to kind of be open to trying to figure out how do we resolve those things that stakeholders have that are like, you know, important to them. And you know, it could have been the same result, right? But I think I did learn how not to manage employees in that scenario. So I will say that.
we
So at
learn a
least
lot
not,
that way too.
yeah, at least not employees like me. So
Well, there's that saying, right? Like hire somebody smart and then leave them alone, and that maybe can work, you know, depending on the situation. Um, yeah, it becomes like you said, it becomes at some point about people challenges.
yeah.
And one thing that I you know, as a product manager, one of the things that I picked up along the way was like from a sales guy at one company, and he's like, I say, because I tried to write an email to a company who I actually ended up working for later, but I was trying to get them to do something like fix a bug or something, and and I wrote a draft, and then the sales guy was looking over my shoulder. He's like, no, no, no. And I was like, what have I done wrong? I told him about the problem. I'm super clear about it. Like, tell me, help me understand. And he's like, I'm going to rewrite this and email it to you, and you tell me what you think. And I read his thing, and I was like, that is amazing. What did you do to change from the thing that I wrote, which I thought was so good, but not at all, to what he did? And he told me this insight. He said, we're always on the same side of the table. So like the person I was writing to, I was saying, your team needs to. And what his approach was more like, for the benefit of all of us,
Mm.
let's do this thing together. And just by making that subtle tweak, he was able to, and they did the thing. Like they did the thing. He needed me to explain it, you know, what the problem was. As a sales guy, he didn't know that, the technical part, but he knew how to sell them that we're all together in this, and they did it. And that's something I've tried to hold on to, is always like, we're on the same team.
That's so important. And it's funny that you say that because I think coming through the engineer track, I've like, there's always this engineer versus sales situation that goes on. And I've learned I have a lot to learn from people who do sales. And even though like I poo-pooed them and I did not like them for a long time as a category, as a class of like job titles and stuff, because I always felt like they were trying to be deceptive. But there's a way to talk, and there's a that it keeps people included. And the psychology of the individual is so important. And you can see that that happens in sales, in marketing, in, you know, in career development as well. You know, how you manage up and those kinds of things. All of that stuff still plays a part, and how you manage down too. It all still plays a part to making sure that you have a good culture with wherever you're at. And that could be just a transactional thing, like where you're trying to get somebody to do something, like you said, or it could be trying to keep the group culture for the long term because it's a company or an organization that has a mission or something like that. All of those things are necessary, and we have to figure out how to communicate. And somebody, I think in uh, in college, it was like I think one of the only communications classes I took. They said the communication goes two ways, and you can only control one of them, but you can do your best to make sure that the other side is heard in the way that you expressed it. And that's the job of communication, is to make sure that they hear in the way that you've expressed, the way that you say it, that they hear what you want them to hear, because you don't really know what's going on in the inside their head. And a lot of times I feel like that kind of communication that you talked about is how engineers talk. And we're like, yeah, but we're clear. Here's the facts, right? But what the other person hears is you suck, you know, or something like that. And it's like, well, that's not what they meant to say. And that's just not what's going on inside of the engineer's head. But they're not being empathetic necessarily to who they're communicating to, and how to be on that same team and make sure that like what's inside their head is the thing that the person really wanted to say, right? What they really wanted to communicate. And that's hard because you have to understand yourself and how you do it, and then you have to understand other people really, really well, and probably to an individual level a lot of times, depending on who you're talking to, see how they take things. And that's it's hard. That's a tough piece of the puzzle. Yeah.
I think you're right. It's about empathy. It's really like how do they see it? Yes, we got the same. Yes, I'm trying to communicate this thing to you. I'm not trying to bring you down. How can I use empathy to understand your side so that the words that I use, the tools that I use to communicate don't pull you away from, right, the moving towards the common direction.
Right.
Yeah, it's so now I feel like we're talking a little bit about sales. So like, why don't you tell me, so you're an entrepreneur, you've got your own business and your own thing going. How are you like handling like marketing and sales of like your group, for example, Founder Labs? I think I found Founder Labs when I was actually in a different group, and I saw somebody put a comment in the thread like, oh yeah, I just did a call with Founder Labs. And I was like, you know what? That sounds pretty cool. I think I'm going to check that out. Like that was how I found Founder Labs. But how do you run and think about marketing sales?
Yeah, it's by design, it's not necessarily the biggest scalable thing, right? So um, my history would show, like my resume might show, like, oh, I've done seven-figure businesses on my own, and I've worked with other companies that are, eight figures and so forth. But um, this company is not designed to scale, right? So I'm just putting that out there as like, here's an asterisk. It's not designed to scale, and the reason for that is because, well, I'll get into the reason later. But I think that to answer your question, the the method that I do this today is a lot in this. It has a lot of the same kind of threads as any kind of freelancing or consulting business, which is really network based. And so there's a lot of like one-on-one time, and there's a lot of referrals, and there's a lot of like being in the community and delivering value inside of a community. And then some of that comes back, and we create a new community, for instance, this Founder Labs. But this community is not necessarily designed to like. I'm not trying to usurp another community. This one is more designed around what I call a guided mastermind. So the other parts of my work are all still referral based for the most part. There's some networking that happens. There's some things that I promote. Like I use Twitter, and I use other communities, other entrepreneurship communities, as kind of my diving board, if you will, or whatever. That's kind of the starting point. But really, it's delivering value inside of those communities, Twitter and or X, I guess, and also these other smaller communities, Slack communities that are private, um, where I start with that, and then I'm really looking for a particular type of person. And uh, when I see those kinds of people, or when they are attracted to what I'm doing and what I talk about in terms of like it's a guided mastermind. The mastermind part of it just really means that it's kind of a small group. The guided part of it really means that like I've realized that I have some experience that a lot of other entrepreneurs don't, and I've found a lot of value in giving that experience over to those entrepreneurs to help them kind of like take shortcuts. So there's some of that, and then there's also a couple of people that are inside the mastermind that are at advanced levels. They're, let's just say they're 20K plus MRR, and those people can also contribute. And the mastermind is truly more of a mastermind. It's more of a peer group at that stage. But at the earlier stages, there's a lot of collaboration, and I think the important part is that the people that are at earlier stages, whether that's ideation or whatever, can learn from those people who are further along. But sometimes those people who are further along learn from the people at the earlier stage, because they forget where you came from, and you're like, oh yeah, I ran into that problem. And there's always, like I said, innovation can come from anywhere. So there's likely going to be an idea that somebody who's new at building a business is going to have some idea because they don't know any better, and they're going to say something, and it's going to spark something in these older entrepreneurs who have been around for a while and understand some of these things. So I think the combination there is really important to have. And then my piece in that is just to say, like, here's some mental models, here's some ways of thinking that I can come at from the outside and say, inject into your business. Oh, you're running into this problem. You're building a two-sided network. So here's one way to handle that at the early stages. Or once you've built these kinds of things up, here's your next challenge that you're going to run into. Just be prepared, that's coming, and think about those things when you reach those levels. So the networking or the sales and those kinds of pieces is really still very much not scalable, but it's not designed to be. I'm not trying to make this 1,000-person community. I don't want it to be. The maximum it will ever get to will be 200, but I don't even know when that'll happen. I'm just gonna maybe I'll slowly get to that place, but it'll be 200. That's gonna be the total. So um, and the part of the reason for that is because I I want to get back to running like a seven-figure SaaS business or something along those lines, but I want to do it as a solo founder. I've had partners in the past, and I also want to do it for the entrepreneurship community, like those entrepreneurs. I want to do it for founders. I like startup founders. That's it. So I want to wake up and hang out with startup founders like you and other people, and that's that's all I want to do. Like I don't want to go do a whole bunch of other stuff. I don't want to work like doing all kinds of other crazy things. I want to work with startup founders. And I think that was what I did wrong in the past, or how I iterated in the past, is like I built these other agencies or these other products, and they were great, but they were people, the customer was not necessarily who I wanted to hang out with all day. And so I just flipped it around and I said, like, okay, instead of going and building a product for something that I know that there's a market for, the real question is, who do I want to hang out with? And that just so happens that it's these people in Twitter and these small communities and these kinds of things. And so then if I build a business that supports those people in a way that they're not being supported, great. Whether that's scalable or not doesn't matter to me right now. It will be eventually. There will be a thread. I will find something that'll be like, oh, I see this is a gap both in what I've built, but also in what everybody else has built. And I will go tackle that at that point. And that will be a scalable solution. But for now, I just want to wake up and hang out with cool people. That's what I want to do. So
We're in sync. That's actually that's what got me to doing this podcast that we're doing right now. Is I really realized I want to spend my time around entrepreneurs, and the things that I want to talk about are how do you optimize your life, which I use those 4 data points: finance, fitness, family, and fun, because I've been doing that for a while in my own life, and I found that it's really useful to help me get better outcomes if I can just use those different filters, and then find ways to make sure that I'm kind of balancing my life this way. So I think that I really feel like that's a great way to go, because I'm doing the same thing, Nate.
confirmation bias, baby. Yeah, that's it. Love it. We're going to support each other here.
I love
You're
it.
doing great, Michael. Keep it up.
You're doing great. Thanks, Nate. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So the other business will come, right? The other business that's a 7-figure business of some type, you're confident that it'll come to you. How will you recognize what's the next 7-figure business that you really want to embark on that adventure? You really want to invest this, what it takes, right? You've done startups before with partners, and now you want to do a solo, adventure, like knowing that intensity and the effort that it's going to take to make that happen. Like, what's going to tell you this is the thing?
So this is going to sound terrible, because it's not going to be a great answer for anybody else, but because I've done it before, I know what it feels like when it works. So people talk about this. If you've done it before, there's this feeling of a pull, not a push. So it's like, and there's bits and pieces, and it ebbs and flows too. Some of these things will come easier than others. And sometimes they'll be easier for a time and then the market will shift. But I think in general, understanding there's the biggest piece is understanding the distribution channel, I think, as well as the product and offering, like that combination of things. You kind of all have to fit. You can't, we talk about like product market fit as if it has to, first of all, that it's a line in the sand, and it's not. There's an evolution, there's a gray scale. And there's different times when you're working on product market fit, there's different versions of that. So you could have product market fit, but maybe not necessarily be optimized, right? And so that's one hyper example of it at the end of the spectrum. But I think that in general, the early stages will not be so hard to to get a new customer. So it will be finding the words that resonate with people, where when you say, this phrase of words or whatever, people go, oh, that's me. Like when you're talking to the right person, it'll be like almost like you read their minds, like that kind of thing, being in the right place at the right time. All of those things, they kind of all have to work together. And when that happens, then you'll feel it, like you'll know it. There will just be an influx, and it won't feel like you're pushing so hard. And I think there's something to be said for like getting through the dip too. So there's something that where like if it feels hard, but you kind of have this understanding, like if you just get through the kind of like the the difficult part, there's usually something that you have to learn, some lever you have to pull or some change that you have to make, but you need some sort of velocity for. So when you get through that piece, you're like, okay, now we're off and running. But sometimes it's just kind of these experiments that you have to run to get to the place where you're like, I don't know about this piece of the puzzle. Everybody starts a business and you don't know all of the pieces of the puzzle. So you just kind of work with it. So for me, I always starting with demand. Like what are people looking for? What is the demand? And then if I can fulfill on that demand, and it really kind of doesn't matter how, but if I can, then that's a good starting point. And then it might be narrowing down from there, trying to figure out like what out of like this whole broad range of things that I'm doing, what's the very specific thing that's like the uh, biggest pain point or the biggest like hair on fire, or it could be even not a pain point necessarily, but like for instance, entertainment's not necessarily a pain point per se, right? But it is a desire, and it can be a burning desire when you're sitting down at the end of the day and you're like tired and you want to hang out and do nothing and just zone out, right? Entertainment's the place you go, or if you want to go to the ball game or whatever. So there's places for all that, but I think that the point is that like there will be an influx at that moment. And when that influx happens, you know that you've got it and you're not trying quite as hard to go push on like, oh, I've got to like run that ad like a million times at a loss to get to this stage, to get to this stage, to get to this next stage, and then they'll convert. Like that's a really hard place to be, right? You're running on hard mode there. So I think the point is like it'll start to feel easier when I have the right offering for the right group of people, and I can get the next customer easier and easier and easier. Like I see a path towards that being easier every single time. So it could be programmatic SEO. It could be like, oh, I've got this ad that I can take from one place to the next. Whatever the case is, it's kind of what we would call like getting your next marginal customer, the person on the edge. If that becomes easier and easier every single time, then you've probably got a really good thing going. And that's the moment. So I don't know what that is yet. I'm experimenting with all of these different ideas and things like that. But and I'm not trying super hard at this point. I'm just kind of listening, just paying attention and being a part of the community and keeping an eye towards it and being like, oh, could I fix that problem in a way that's like scalable? Maybe, maybe not. Right. Like, let's see and play with it. So,
Yeah, there's a quote that I actually have printed out right here on my computer, and it says, "Stay in the game long enough to get lucky."
it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think it was that the guy who runs the Founders podcast, and he reads all these books, and he's like, one of the top two takeaways, and I think
Yeah.
the other one was maybe just say yes or something like that. Like really simple takeaways from reading like hundreds of, biographies about entrepreneurs. And so I feel like that's what I'm hearing, like you want to have a community, right? People that you could hang out with, and like you're like tending to the garden of ideas, right? You're like, let me help ideas grow in general. And then by doing so, you're in the mix with all the ideas, and you'll be ready when your idea hits, and you can, and I really like how you describe that feeling of being pulled, as opposed to feeling like it's such an uphill battle to, get every little sale and every little, like it really is a different feeling. Um, I haven't experienced like huge success where it's like pulled everything out of me for 10 years or something like that, but or maybe I have, and I'm just not recognizing it as such. But actually you could probably argue that parenthood is such a thing, right? Because your kids are definitely pulling from you, right? They need you while they need you. And that's it probably depends on the situation, but for me, I think it was about 12 years. And then around then, I got the feeling like really strongly, like this guy doesn't need me anymore. He kind of got it. He kind of got the download. And and for what I saw for myself at that time was I really need to change my frame of how do I view my life, because I was viewing my life as, how do I help him at every moment, to like, oh, if he doesn't need me, okay, how do I live a life that I will continue to enjoy while being his dad in a different way, or he doesn't need me the same amount. So your kids, are they teenagers now? Are they younger than that?
So one of them is a teenager, he's 13, and the other is 11. And then we have a 4-year-old girl as well. So we're kind of like spanning the gamut here.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got your hands full.
Yeah.
So, like, to me, and I'm guessing you'll agree, as a parent, like, we do this because it brings us this kind of joy that we can't get any other way, right? Like, it's kind of the purest form of, you know, giving to the world, but through your children, because you love them unconditionally. So how's that changed you? Like, what changes it made in your life to be a parent, and like, how's it changed you as a person?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wrestled with those kinds of questions a lot. So I have a friend who he his his boy is about a year older than mine, his first. And when we told him that we were going to have a kid, he was like, "Oh my gosh, it's going to change your life!" Like the minute that kid breathes his first breath. And I don't know if I'm like just a little too robotic or what, but that never happened for me. So, and it's been hard. I mean, to be honest, like I think I had another friend who was like, "We're thinking about having kids. Tell me the truth." He's like, I know no one's going to tell me the truth. Like you're going to tell me the truth." And I'm like, "Dude, it's hard. Like it's really, really hard. Like don't let people like kid you and tell you that." It's, I think for some reason, like the previous generations were like, and like my mom and other people included, they're like, "When are you going to have kids? It's the greatest thing ever. It's such a blessing." And I'm like, and having kids, I'm like, well, it's great, yeah, but it's freaking ridiculous too. You're like, are you kidding me right now? Like, this is what I've decided my life is going to be like. So there's a blessing with it, but there's also just like there's a difficulty level that you've never experienced before. And I think that that's probably my biggest takeaway is that we don't the times where you're going to learn the most are in the hard times. We don't learn when it's easy. Like you just skate and you're like, this is awesome. And you sit back and you drink your whatever from your koozie. It's, like you're not like trying to go, what should I learn out of this lesson right now of like easy street, right? But when you're in hard mode and things suck and it's just really, really difficult, and that's a lot, there's a lot of like the first 12 years of like parenting that was that way. Um, I think that's where you learn the most. And I don't know if it's necessarily, I think it's more about yourself than it is anything else. And I think that like you're going to learn about how you relate to other people in those circumstances. What are your stress points and why? Like, why do I freak out when this happens? Like, what does that have to do with anything? And you're like, oh, I have some sort of like trauma in my past, or like whatever, or like this is the way I think, and yet that's different from the way this tiny human thinks. And they come with baked in personalities, baked in opinions. They just can't express it until later. And so like, but they're their own person really early on. And so
Which is amazing, by the way.
yeah, which is amazing. But
Yeah.
also you're like, if you think about it, like I said this when my oldest was like, I think 4, and we were really struggling. And I was like, man, like I designed my life as an adult to not be around the selfish people who are just take, who whine and cry and are negative all the time. Like I designed my life to not be around that, right? And then I had a kid. And I can't get rid of that. Like they're just that way constantly. And you're like, please stop. Like, please be positive. And like it's so hard sometimes to get that across. And eventually, yes, hopefully with the right training and everything, and hopefully we're not negative. We don't, portray that to our kids either. But ideally, like we get to this place where that's no longer the case. But like it's a long road. Like when we were in high school or when we were in college and you just get out of those situations, like you leave. If you don't like them, you leave. You're like, I don't want to be friends with that person anymore. So you just, do whatever it is that you do to like not have that friend. But that's not the case, when it comes to kids. So it's, you don't get those choices. And so you have to figure that out.
So what did you
Sorry?
what did you do? How did
So
you figure it out?
bear through it, try and figure out, work on yourself and like, be like, why am I so triggered right now? like,
Yeah.
I think you just have, there's nothing you can do really about them other than just consistency in principles. And then the rest of it is you can't control them, right? So just like anybody else, I can't control you. I can't control the person on the street. I can only control myself. And I need to work on that. Right. So fixing my own version of like why I'm getting triggered or what the reason is or why I'm so upset on whatever. Like that's the reflection part. That's the hard part. And that is definitely something we learn. So
They're really good at finding those buttons. Like whatever it is that you think that you're pretty good at dealing with, and you figured it all out, and you're grown up now, and I'm ready to have a kid, and they will hone in on that like the targeting computer at Star Wars, and they're just gonna point exactly at your button and press it and press it and press it, and then you get to learn like, okay, this kid that I love more than anything is pressing this button that annoys me more than anything. How do I resolve this? What an amazing challenge, right? So is entrepreneurship easier?
yeah, it is. I would say it's definitely easier. Like people are like, oh, what does your wife do? And I'm like, oh, she has the hard job. Like she's at home with the kids, and like, especially since she's homeschooling too. So like tack that on. But like, I get from, yes, entrepreneurship's hard, but working on yourself is way harder. So entrepreneurship is a part, like does that to you too,
It does it
because you
too.
have to, yeah, you have to figure out as a leader, because that's it, unless you're doing like a business as one, you really have to, understand how you work with other people, and that's a piece of the puzzle too. So yeah.
Yeah. So did you gain an insight into yourself that you were able to overcome about yourself and become like a new Nate, like through
Ooh.
that, through the
You,
parenting?
you should have my wife on this podcast, because I don't know about that. I don't know about that. It's, everything's kind of such a slow drip that it's hard to tell. I would imagine maybe, maybe, um, I guess the one thing that I probably have changed over time, and I'm not sure it's parenting or entrepreneurship, or I would probably give more attribution to my wife than anything, but like I would say that I'm probably, um, I have this, I have less of a self-deception when it comes to my own identity, and I think that is that I used to think that I'm very robotic and very like logical. Um, I think I'm a lot less logical and a lot less robotic than I probably thought that I was this whole time. And so at least I can understand that and kind of tap into that and be like, okay, I am very emotional. I make decisions emotionally. These kinds of things. I think especially as engineers, we put that on a pedestal and be like, we are this way and we think logically. That's not always the case. It's almost never actually the case. It's just a nice facade that we like to put ourselves into. And because we can talk about things that people don't understand, it's an easy way for us to kind of hide that fact. But it's unlikely that we as humans, engineers or otherwise, are any more robotic than anyone else. Like it's probably we're just hiding it somehow. You're still emotional when you make decisions, period. And I think that's the kind of quintessential moment where you can point to and be like, no, we still have our thing, and it's just different, and it's just maybe hidden behind a whole bunch of like self rationality, or I would even say self deception. But yeah, so I think that's probably the biggest light that I had in my life is like, and I would say likely it's more from being married than it is with having kids, because she was able to like shine that light and be like, yeah, you're not as like robotic as you say you are. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, in the right space at the right time, she was able to say those things. And it's taken a long time to kind of work through that.
Yeah. And then once you become aware of it, right? Like, hey, I do have emotions, and sometimes those emotions are happening, and they're the biggest thing that's underscoring this direction of this decision, then now having that umbrella understanding, then you can go, okay, I've got that. I understand this piece about me. Does that fully serve me? How can I like improve on that? Or is that the best way to make decisions? Right.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, all of these pieces are like that we have for ourselves. And that's the beautiful thing about it is like you can look at yourself as like a bunch of like ideas and just like be like, do I really resonate with that same idea? Is that really truly, is it positive? Is it negative? Is it neither? Is it in different circumstances? Does it change? Is it really enhancing my life? Should I just remove that from my identity or from my like who I believe myself is and change that? And if it's not serving you, then I think I was listening to somebody recently, and they said the world basically teaches us to consider ourselves or identity as who we are, but not as who we're becoming. And really the question is, who are you becoming? And it's a difference between the static and the dynamic mindset, right? So like we are who we are because of like what role you're in. When we are taught things in school, it's always designed around like static. You're smart, you're dumb, you're this, you're that, you're good at math, you're not good at math, you're good at art, you're not good at art, whatever. But that's never like, who do you want to be or who are you becoming, right? That's rare. And I think that's a big difference is like you can, from what the world teaches us or tries to shove us into versus who we are as humans, we are always progressing, right? And we just forget sometimes to ask the question of ourselves, like, who are we becoming and who do we want to become? Those are very different things, you know?
I noticed because I've been hanging out with you, like I noticed that you did maybe an unexpected decision, right? With as a guy who's married and with three kids of different ages, some younger, right? The decision I saw you make uh, was to travel with your family, and so I want to ask you about that. Like, what got you to the place where you wanted to travel with your family? Tell us a little bit about that adventure and like what was the outcome and was it what you expected?
Okay, so there's a lot there. The so what got us to travel? Well, actually, it was kind of like um, it was more delayed than anything. It wasn't necessarily a decision like one day we sat down and we are like, oh, we should travel the world. It was more like actually before we got married, when we were talking to each other about being married, we were like, well, let's just kind of like set the guidelines here. What do you think that success is? And by the way, this is a good thing to talk about from a business partner perspective, not to mention a life partner, but um, what is success to you? And in both of our cases, I mean, we were both pretty young, but we were like traveling. We still want to be able to travel. And the money wasn't necessarily like a big deal. Like you can travel lightly. There's lots of different ways to do it. Um, and so it wasn't like having a bunch of money and then traveling. It was just being able to explore the world because it's too big of a place. So just sit in the same place and just think that that's whatever you're fed about the world is what the world is like, right? Like I don't want to take third party information on that. I want to go experience it. And so I wanted to travel and she wanted to travel. And we're like, well, then we should set ourselves up to do that. And so everything we did, even from that point forward, was designed around being able to have the ability to travel. And then we hung out for 20 years doing stuff. I mean, we traveled, but like not like full time. Um, we had gone a few places. She had lived in Sweden. We had lived in France for a short period of time, and we had done some traveling here and there, um, but not like full time travel, right? And so, and I think probably COVID had something to do with it, but in general, we were sitting around with like I had worked remote for a long time. She had decided to homeschool our kids, and the real impetus for all of that was we want the flexibility to be anywhere we want to be. And so with that, we finally decided we were sitting around having just moved to San Diego. Again, we had lived there for 10 years. We left, came back after 6 or 7 years, and we were sitting there in the house, and she was like, "Why are we in this house again?" Because like we had said at one point, we didn't want to like work for the house. We didn't want to be house poor. We didn't want to like work for the single location to be in that location. We wanted to be able to be flexible. And so she was like, "Why don't we just get an RV and travel the country since we can't go anywhere else right now?" And I was like, "No." And it took a month, and she convinced me, and because I didn't want to be in an RV, and it was more because I didn't want the responsibility of having like to deal with the RV. And so, but over time, I got comfortable with it, and I was like, I think I can do this. And also realized like I was really comfortable. I had a position as a CTO. I was paid well. I could have sat in that job for a really long time. That was a good startup. It's going places. So, but I was really, really comfortable, and I had a lack of ideas. And that to me was a trigger point. I was like, why do I not have ideas? Like, that's weird. I always have ideas like for stuff. And so I realized like I'm way too comfortable. And I said, okay, fine, let's do it. And so it was that point where we got the RV and we started traveling around. And we had already set our lives up to do it. It's just that we never really, pulled the trigger on it and did anything about it. And so finally we did. We traveled around for almost 2 years. And through some circumstances ended up back in the Northwest. Um, and it was with those circumstances that kind of like passed through, and some events that had happened that had concluded. We The world had opened up again, right? So we noticed that the borders were not closing; they were going back and forth, and we weren't comfortable like bringing our kids out into another country and then being stuck there for some period of time and not being able to go and continue to go traveling anywhere else and be stuck in a country potentially that we didn't know. So we decided to go around our own country, and then when the borders were like opened up enough, we were like, okay, it looks pretty stable. Now's the time we can go out, and we could kind of like eke our way into it and go into countries that we knew were probably going to stay open anyway. And that's when we started. And so then we sold everything. So that was the second time we sold everything. So the first time was to get in the RV. The second time was to get out of the RV and to get into backpacks. And then yeah, so then we took all the kids and ourselves in backpacks and traveled the world for 15 months. And so almost a year and a half later, we settled. So just 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, I guess, we decided to settle down. So yeah, so it's been almost 3 years of travel, full-time travel.
What changed? What changed for you? Like, because you were traveling and then you're like, now I got to go. Now we got to settle down for a while, right? Like, what did you learn and how did you grow? And then what made you realize, okay, this was great, 3 years travel, and now let's land somewhere for an extended period of time.
So yeah, so the real impetus came down to like that the kids were getting old enough where we were like, we wanted, before they got into cars and started driving around with friends, we wanted them to be on bikes and riding around with friends and meeting people and having a good time in a smaller community again. And so we had this at one point. They missed their cousins, so we're kind of in this space that's kind of similar to them. We're in this corridor where there's family all along the path, where we're located now. So there's family to the east of us, family to the west of us, family in the same city. So all of that was really important. And they wanted to be in snow. And the whole time we were traveling, we were just avoiding all kinds of cold weather. So we had 3 years of nice, chasing 70 sort of weather. And they were like, hey, can we go snowboarding or something? Like, we want to throw a snowball. And so the combination of all of those things it's time to kind of chill and let everybody kind of like get embedded into a community again and kind of feel the benefits of being involved in community.
So you really let your relationship with the kids, what you wanted to do for them as a parent, drive the decision to come to a new home base where you could spend an extended amount of time. It sounds like what you wanted for your kids made that decision for you.
Yes and no. I would say like they had input. I wouldn't say that they necessarily drove the decision to stop. Part of it also was like my wife and I, it's hard when you're traveling. Like, we were at a place internationally when we were doing international travel. We were moving approximately once every 3 weeks, on average. And that's hard to get structure to work. It's hard to get structure to school. You can't make friends. We couldn't make friends. Right. And so like it's just really difficult to kind of feel a sense of connectivity. And so we wanted that, and we had talked about it and said, like, I think we might be done here. And it's funny, she and I are so opposite, but the same. We go in the same direction for completely different reasons. But about the same time, we were kind of like, "Are you done? I'm kind of done. You want to be done? I might want to be done, but like, where do we want to be done? Like, we might want to like, is it Lisbon? Is it back in the United States? Is it Mexico? Like, who knows?" And we were talking about where it could be, and then we were like, "Well, this is a good place. If we feel like we're going to be done, this is a good place to open it up and be like, hey, kids, where do you want to be? Like, if you could settle anywhere, where would you be?" And they rattled off a bunch of things, and this was over the course of a couple months, and we just kind of kept track of it. We're like, okay, snow and small community, small-ish community, and friends and family, and different weather, having all 4 seasons, those kinds of things were important to them. And we're like, well, I'd be fine with that. Are you fine with that? And she's like, yeah, I'm fine with that. And okay, then let's, where could we go? And it was funny because 5 years ago, we already looked at this community to move into, and then it just all ticked all the boxes for everybody. And we're like, well, it's an easy fit. So let's just go there. So it all just kind of worked out all at the same time. It wasn't that they directed us. It was more that like we had already made the decision, and it was like, but we were flexible. Where could we have gone? And I could have, continued to live, maybe not Mexico, but I could have continued to live in Portugal or Scotland or something like that. No problem. And they're like, no, we kind of want to be back in the States. I'm like, okay, that's fine. We'll go back to the States. So I think the thing is that we're all pretty flexible, and we just say what we want, and we'll optimize as best as we can to get as many of those boxes checked.
So that really fits in with what you were saying earlier about in your entrepreneurial, adventures. Like, you want to hear like from everyone, right? Like, great ideas can come from anywhere. And then
Yep.
you're also implementing that in your family structure, like let's hear from you guys, the kids too. It's not just you and your wife, but your kids also have a say in the direction of what the family is going to pursue.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I mean, we're still the parents. We don't let them like dictate everything. But yeah, there's no reason to not let them have a say. I think when I was young, I was really put off when people would kind of like say you couldn't do something as a kid. And I was like, why not? Like I have an opinion, and why couldn't I do the thing? You know what I mean? Like if you tell me like I can't do something because I'm a kid, that's not really a great reason unless it's like legally, you know what I mean? Like or like because I'm too short. Okay, fair, but that's not a kid problem. That's like a height problem, right? So it's really about getting to the source of the matter. And I think that like the earlier that we allow our kids to have ownership and authority and responsibility, I think the better citizens they become. And because they'll learn through failures and through struggles and through, oh my gosh, I have this authority to do these things. I'm also responsible for those things. Like it comes with both, right? And even right now, like our teenagers, like, I want to get to drive. And I'm like, driving is awesome. Don't let me kid you. But also you're driving a really big vehicle down a road. You have some serious responsibility when it comes to that kind of thing. So along the path of going towards adulthood, you have a whole lot more responsibility that comes along with that freedom. And you just have to be careful with that, right? So we're letting them make choices. And honestly, bringing it back to them too. Be like, you wanted cold weather. Here's cold weather. Here's what that means, right? like so, and which we're fine with, right? Like it's all good. But like it's one of those things. It's like I don't want to hear any complaining when it's
Test
time.
that first.
Yeah. So yeah, we all make the choice, but like at the end of the day, it's like that's part of the deal, right? Like so.
Yeah. 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 And then, so do you feel like by giving your kids the chance to speak up and like have their say, in like family decisions, like, do you feel like they're really good at expressing themselves? Like, is it going to be tough for them to figure out something like along the lines of what do they want to pursue in their life?
Mm. I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure if that necessarily correlates or not. It might. I think they're good at expressing themselves in constructive ways generally because we have a pretty kind of tight rein on that. We try and look for like positive ways to express themselves, or at least constructive ways. So if they don't like something, we obviously make them use their words and not just like have a tantrum. But yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. I don't know. I mean, I guess check back in 10 years and we'll find out. We'll find out together. So,
There we go.
yeah, I hope so, but
My
I'm not sure if it's causal. Yeah.
My son, I did some traveling with my son too, and we went to Japan when he was like 8, but it was around that time, just before that actually, that he kind of had this like download that he gave me. Like he was a quiet kid. He was just like, Dad, I want to be a computer scientist. I want to make video games, and I want us to make a business together doing that. And we're going to make apps for iOS. Like this is a quiet kid. So, uh, he's not somebody that I would have said like, yes, he's expressive all the time. Yes, he uses his words at that time. Now,
Mhm.
of course, it's different. But at that time, it just came out of nowhere, seemingly,
Mhm.
like all at once.
Yeah.
So I am curious to hear more about, when your kids like figure out what they want to do, and then how you're going to like support that. I know you're going to be great with them on that. So it's awesome to hear that you're like so supportive of them. Like I really think it's super important that they feel some sense of control over their lives, which I feel
Mhm.
like I'm hearing that you're giving them.
Yeah.
I think you and I both probably experienced some similar stuff in childhood. Where like, no, you can't do that. Like when I was a kid, you can't touch the stereo. Are you crazy? Like what? Why not? Maybe I could use the stereo better than you can. No, you're gonna break. Like, but kids now, they get their devices, they're 2 or 3, and they'll show you. My son showed me all kinds of stuff on the device. And he totally used it better than me. But that's a generational shift, you know.
Yeah.
So really feeling that.
Yeah. And I think for us, I mean, what we're trying to optimize for here is not being scared of doing something new, right? So I think that's with travel, we wanted to take away the fear of like going to a new place and not understanding the culture, not knowing the money situation, not even knowing the language. How do you get around in that situation, right? And that it doesn't have to be scary. Like you can jump and go anywhere in the world and land, and you'll probably be fine. You know what I mean? Like you can work through the problems and figure it out. So it's more about like, um, I think this is a lot of what we do is trying to have them in situations where they have to use their problem solving capabilities and think through things. And so I don't know if that's necessarily going to give them the most like concrete outlook on what they want to do in the future. And actually, like even from a savings account, I don't think my wife and I have ever decided that, to like people have a college fund, right? We have a college fund, but for each of the kids, but I don't really believe that college did anything for me. Um, and so I don't believe in college in the way that we used to. Um, I don't think it works the same way. And I think there's lots of reasons not to go to college. And so what we've told them is that yes, it's a college fund, but realistically, it's just a fund. And if they want to use it for college, they can. It's set up to do that. But if they don't, they can take it and go buy a house or start a business or whatever. We're hopefully training them not to go spend it on a whole bunch of stupid crap. But at the same time, and I don't think they would, but at the same time, it's going to be theirs to use to set themselves up. And I think it's difficult enough in the world. Like there's no reason why we can't give them a little boost. And if it's a small amount each month, it's not going to get them, it wouldn't get them a 4-year ride at a private institution or anything like that. It would be a small amount of money to get them going. But I don't think that college is necessarily the best use of that money either. Um, Especially in this day and age, when you can get a college degree and there's a cap on the amount of money you could make from whatever that college degree is, you have a hard time paying that college degree back. It's not really worth the money. The ROI is terrible. However, there's plenty of places you can go that may not even need a college degree that have an unlimited upside. And those jobs we should be talking about, how to choose those jobs. If you need a college degree for that, fine, go get one. But if you don't, great. Then use that money to go start the business and have an unlimited upside
So yeah,
potential.
tell me about those jobs. Like, what would you recommend?
I think real estate's one of those. Like you could build a team. It's a great example because you could start from practically zero, get a license for very little money, and then start your business. And if you're in a good market, then you're starting out on a good foot. Like it's still going to take time. You're still going to take a couple years to build your network and do your thing, and figure out how to do it well and how to advertise and how to get new clients and that kind of thing. But realistically, like, I mean, the upside, the cap on that job is practically unlimited, almost, right? Like, so if there were some sort of like degree, imagine what the cost of that degree could be. It would be ridiculously huge, right? Because it has an almost unlimited upside. But if you look at like, for instance, there's so many PhDs that are out there that don't make $120,000 a year because they're capped. The potential for their earning capacity is maximized. And what they didn't realize is that PhD cost them $120,000 or more, right? So why would you do that to yourself? Like from a financial perspective, that's so terrible. And it's not necessarily their choice. I mean, well, it's their choice to go do it. There's some love of whatever they're into or whatever. But like the problem that I see is that the institutions themselves are charging that amount of money. There's no value that will recoup that cost, and it still costs that amount of money. Like it's going to take them 30 years to pay that off if they ever do. I mean, it's just, to me, that's it's as bad as a whole lot of other terrible businesses that exist out there. Like, from a business perspective.
Right. So the one thing that's guaranteed when you enter into that agreement with the college or the university who has the accreditation, right, is that you will be paying them money.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that's guaranteed. You're not guaranteed to graduate with the degree. You're not guaranteed to get a job afterwards. You're not guaranteed to be able to repay the loan, but you will owe them money no matter what.
Yep. Yep. And there's no value associated with it. Like, right? Like if you buy real estate, the house could burn down, you get insurance money. The house doesn't burn down, or you buy land or something, the land has value. Inherently right now, the land has a particular value. It might go down because it does at times, but the land has some use, let's just say, right? So the ability to use that land doesn't necessarily go away. You could use that land for all kinds of different things. So, and the best use of that land is going to drive the dollar value, right? So you end up with an asset, a potential, and I use that lightly. Like in my world, asset means something completely different. But let's just call it an asset. It's something you can resell. It is probably not going to go down in value, not going to go to zero. Okay. But if you buy yourself an education at an institution, what's it worth? It's
It's
super hard
able to be
to do.
determined. Yeah.
Right.
Um,
So
so real estate. So let's assume you're giving advice to others, right? Someone like your kids in a few years, or just somebody who's starting out as an entrepreneur. So we heard real estate. What are some other businesses that they might be able to get into, and not have to go the university route?
well, I think so much of the entrepreneurial world, I mean, it's hard for me to like pinpoint, but like, I mean, so much of the entrepreneurial world can be that because we're at a point in the world with the internet like that has so few caps on it. And so like just take bootstrap B2B SaaS. I mean, it's like the most quintessential example that everybody's talking about right now, right? That alone with the right, the second B, that side of that, sell to real estate agents. I mean, sell to consumers if you want to, but like s- I think the possibilities to build digital software systems or even hardware in some cases, but like building software is really inexpensive, really easy to get going, and there's a massive opportunity. Like let's just put like for instance, let's say um, here's another one. Uh, how to do Facebook ads for plumbers. Start geographically limited, expand practically unlimited. Like you have the world, or let's just keep it in the English sphere. You have the United States to start with. How big is that market for Facebook ads for plumbers? And that's kind of like the dumbest version of what's out there. But I think that a lot of people just don't go do that. Even actually going and being a service, if you're in the service market, it's not necessarily unlimited, but in the right markets, like let's just say that you are a plumber or an HVAC electrician or whatever, like you have a cap to the upside if you were working for somebody else. But if you're running your own business, who's to say that you can't go from Seattle and then expand to Los Angeles and then Vegas and then so forth, right? This is how national companies are created, and then also mergers and acquisitions. Why not go buy your competitors out? Why not go get financing to do that? Become a a global company in doing things like this. Like, there's no reason why you can't just keep expanding if you wanted to. Doesn't mean you want to, but like the possibilities are massive. So I don't think we're limited by necessarily like any one particular. Um, I don't think we need to limit ourselves to like one particular group of company types. I think it expands if you just open your brain up to like how could this go? What could you continue to do? And if you don't, if you want to be local and enjoy that lifestyle, that's perfectly fine too, by the way. That's the other thing. Is like with the amount of money that we've saved for them, like, look, just buy a house and just enjoy the house if that's what you want to do. You don't have to build a multinational corporation. You don't have to go, if you want to go to college and get a capped job, go do that. That's fine. We're not going to like tell them they're terrible people or that they have ruined their lives or their opportunity because of that, if that's what they want to do. But just like with travel, if you want to stay in the United States in your small little town and never travel, fine, do that. I have no problem with that, right? But just know that the world is out there and you could go see a lot of other things too. And just know that like you could get an effectively unlimited uh, income if you do things well. If you hone in on those things and then go experience it and try. You could do all kinds of things. I'm not saying you can do everything. There's all kinds of other luck and all kinds of other forces at play, right? Market and whatever. But why put yourself into the position where you are capped because somebody else says so? I don't know. I guess we're going back to that thread again.
Oh, that's great.
Authority.
I think it's super helpful. Yeah, right. Back to authority, that you can only earn this much if you work for me. And you can only do these things to help the business that you're a part of, that you're trying to, save or whatever, trying to not have them waste all their money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so tell us, it's the four F's, right? We've talked about finance, talked about family, fitness. Sitting at a desk all day can take a toll. What is it? What do you do for fitness, Nate?
I'm not so good at this part of it, but I'm working on it. So there was a time that I hated going to the gym, and I still don't like going to the gym. I don't like running. I like competition. So I'll play sports. But I'm getting older now. I've wrecked my shoulder, wrecked my ankle playing volleyball. I used to play every sport in the book except for basketball. And but I've gotten to the place where now like I like CrossFit. And it's just because and it could be anything. But if it has lifting weights because I'm getting older, that's necessary for bone density. And then um, community related to it. And CrossFit has both of those things. And so I like CrossFit for that reason. So in the next like week or so, I'll be joining a CrossFit gym here. And I had done one before, but that's kind of like the one thing that I really enjoy. So
Nice. And so just for anybody who doesn't know, CrossFit is
really intense functional workout. It's really what it's called. So it's they call it a functional workout, but it's like high intensity training combined with lifting weights. Um, High intensity training would be like doing something to get your heartbeat. It's like super hard, super fast, and then slowing down for 15 seconds to 30 seconds, and then doing it again. Or in the case of like where they say it's like functional training, it's doing box jumps or climbing a rope or pull ups or things like that, where you're it's a single motion kind of like training exercise. But part of it is lifting weights. So and like I said, that appeals to me because as you get older, you lose bone density and you lose because of the loss of muscle mass. And I worked out with the guy who was like the number 4. I think he was the 4th guy at CrossFit. And at one point, and he was 50 in his mid 50s, and he's like, "Look, we lose our muscle mass 1% every year now." And he's like, "I'm just trying to keep up. I'll never be 24 again. I'm trying to make that loss go slower." So that's kind of where I'm at is just trying to be able to continue that.
so it's like a circuit and you go through different like exercises and then you come back around and do them again after like a waiting period in between. Is that
Can be. Yeah, it's usually they have a different workout every day. And so sometimes it's a cardio based workout. So you'll be running and then rowing and then cycling and things like that. And the next day it'll be like lifting weights. And so yeah, so there's usually some sort of circuit that you're doing, but the circuit changes like every day. There's a new workout every single day.
so you pop in for an hour, you do your CrossFit, and then like what are you doing nutritionally?
Um, so my wife is in charge of our food. She does everything organic. Tries to get everything, and not just organic, but like basically trying to get to the place where ideally our fridge and our cupboards are full of foods that effectively have like I think there's some limitations like less than 5 or 6 ingredients in the package. So if you look at and I think it was like I don't know if it's Argentina or somewhere in South America, I can't remember where. They basically outlawed, or they're not outlawed, they're going to tax um, any ultra processed foods. And so we're kind of like thinking in that same kind of space as um, not necessarily raw or carnivore or vegan or anything like that, but just trying to get the least amount of like crazy ingredients in a list, like get it down to like eggs and I don't know, whatever. I'm gonna not even gonna go there, but
Have
like
you seen
the
like
least number of ingredients in a thing,
yeah,
right? Like less
that,
processed.
that meme and it's like Captain Crunch or some cereal from the US versus Germany, and the US has like 1,000 ingredients and the German one has like 5 ingredients,
Yeah.
and it's the same product. I think it's Fruit Loops. It's the same product.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
manufactured in a different country where they don't allow what you said, the ultra processed foods. They know it's not healthy for their populace, so they make it not available at the highest level. So whatever you buy in the store is healthy. You don't even have to work that hard at it.
Yeah.
So how
That's
how
a
are you
big
solving that? Like here,
well,
where those ingredients are allowed.
it's tough, and honestly, it's one of the biggest drawbacks of being in the United States. After having traveled for as long as we did internationally, coming back to the United States, the food situation is really hard. Everywhere you go, anything you buy, it has all kinds of crazy crap in it, and there's nothing that honestly, I don't know that we're going to be able to do anything about it. There's too much money in the lobbyist situations, all the big whatever food groups. Um, there's just too much money in all of that to keep the government from outlawing that kind of thing. And really what it comes down to is like, unfortunately, politically, I think we um, care more about the dollar than we do about the individual. And that's hard. So we're buying, as many raw vegetables and fruits and all of those kinds of things as possible, getting organic meat and, grass fed um, meats and eggs and high quality cheese, and all the other things. Just trying to make it as high quality as possible with the least number of like crazy weird ingredients in it. That's that's the starting point. And then everything else kind of comes from there. For me, I'm a big believer. Like vitamin D has changed my life, like in a big way. Um,
How?
um, I suffer with seasonal depression. It's not something that I normally would like say or talk about. I think I've talked to two people about it, but I think that, and I wouldn't even, I don't even know if it's categorized as that. It's not like I've gone to a doctor or anything like that, but I've noticed the patterns in my life and what I think about and how I think. And when the sun goes away and it gets cloudy out um, for a long period of time, and then when alcohol's involved, if I'm drinking any alcohol, that combination usually is not a great combo for me. Like I'll start
I
thinking
mean,
about things that aren't great, right?
alcohol is a depressant, right? So you're just
Right,
you're pouring water on that plant, depression plant.
right. So one of the things that with vitamin D has changed that for me. So like getting out in the
Yes.
sunshine, vitamin D specifically, like for whatever reason, I don't know why, but in my kind of chemistry, it just turns out that like if I stay up on vitamin D, not only do I stay healthy, but it kind of keeps away a lot of that crazy crap that's in my head sometimes. I don't know what the deal is. I honestly don't have a scientific explanation for it. It works for me.
Do you wake up early when the sun rises and go out and like experience the sun? Like, how do you maximize or optimize for vitamin D?
Yeah, I'm trying some of that, like the Huberman Labs stuff. Like I think that's all really good. Like, I mean, he's the scientist, so I'm just gonna, I'll just defer to him. But like, yeah, I think that's any chance I can get in the sunshine and like get that vitamin D naturally, of course I'm gonna do that, right? But now we're living kind of in the Northwest. That's not as available all the time. And sometimes when it is, it's really cold outside. So it just depends. But yeah, that's where the vitamin D supplements come into play for me. And they've
I'll
been game changers.
In case it's helpful, I'll share a link with you. There was I think it was, I don't know who it was, Sam Altman or somebody was like, this is the light that I use, and it's like $20 on Amazon.
Mm,
And I bought one, and it seems to be a full spectrum light that you can, when it is cloudy outside, or when you're experiencing like jet lag from being, overnight or something, you miss the sun, like
yeah,
you could use this apparently to activate the vitamin D. I'll share that with you, and I'll put a link in the video somewhere
yeah,
under the video.
cool.
Yeah.
That'd be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I think
that's,
that,
oh, go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's good.
So all right. So what's on your like fun bucket list? Like, here we are. We're guys upward of age 40. You've had some fun in your life. What do you want now on your fun bucket list? Like, what do you call fun, and what do you want to call fun?
I still want to travel. That has not gotten out of my system. So I still want to go to Japan and Argentina and Uruguay. I want to see Antarctica and things like that we weren't able to see. So that's still on my list. I want to go live in Europe probably. So that's still on my list. I want to live there for a long period of time. Like I don't want it to just be like a couple of months like what we've done before. Um,
Where do you want to live, and how long do you want to live there?
I don't know where. That's the problem. So I want to go still. I haven't traveled a ton of Western Europe, so that's still to be explored for me. But we almost bought a place in Portugal when we were, but we were just starting out, and it was like we just started out. We landed in Portugal. It was like we were there for 2 months, I think, and then we ended up in, just south of Lisbon, and there was places for sale, and we're like, this is awesome. There's a community of real estate investors that were like, oh yeah, this is a good one. This is a good one. Check out this one. This one's going to be for sale next week or whatever. This one's not for sale, but they would probably sell, and it was really fun. But then it was one of those things where we were like, well, we just started. Like maybe we should hang on to our money, like, come back around and see the rest of the world first. Maybe they're a better place. Who knows? But I don't know. So, but I don't know that we would probably live in Portugal. I think it's great, but I don't know that we want to live there. But I don't know. Like me, I love France, so that's a possibility. But the bureaucracy is difficult, so maybe we'll
What do
go
you
through that.
love in France? What's there in France that's not in the Northwest?
Um, well, there's Mediterranean for one. That's nice. The food is the primary reason, but the secondary reason is it's just the opposite of the hustle culture that we have in the United States. It's everything is slower, almost to the not almost. It can be extremely and excruciatingly like irritating. So it's that slow, but also they have a balance. There's a philosophy where, for instance, like as it's just a simple example, like in the US, we'll talk about like where do you, what do you do as a job? That's like number 2. Like, hi, my name's Nate. Where do you live? What do you do? That's like number 2 or 3 question, right? That's not asked in France. Like, it's just not even on the table. If they're going to ask something, it's going to be what in the phrase is different, but like it's basically like, why do you get up in the morning? Like, what is it? What are you living for? That's
Oh,
an interesting question. Let's talk about that, right? Like, I want to know what you're passionate about. Like, why do you wake up in the morning? What do you want to do with your life? Like, not like as in like what are your achievement? What do you want to go achieve? But just what's life like for you? That's an interesting question, right? Like, I
yeah.
don't even know if I've fully explored that for myself. I would like more people to ask me that question.
Let's have it right now. What
I
gets you
know.
up in the morning? What's
I
life?
know. That's the thing. That's the thing. Like, I think I need space in my brain and life to be able to like kind of think that through. And I don't know that I've really fully grasped it. So I don't know. I wanna hang out with people and ask interesting questions of them too. So that's I think that slow lifestyle, and don't get me wrong, there's definitely some downsides to it because we've been there, but that ability to kind of slow down and balance things out, I think is really important. And I think that's like a common vein of things that I've learned over the last, I don't know, decade or two that is that balance. It's just it's hard. It's hard to say to do that. I can't it's not I think it's a timing thing. I don't think I could tell myself when I was 20 to balance things. Like I would just I wouldn't listen to myself anyway. But I think the older I get, the more I'm like, yeah, work hard, like enjoy it, like do the thing that you like to do, but also like stop and then hang out with your friends and go play at the beach and take a hike and just take a bike around the neighborhood, like whatever, but like slow everything down and just enjoy life. And that's something they have like built into their culture, enjoy life. And
Yeah.
I want that like around me. Like, you know how they say like you're the average of your 5 friends? Like I want a couple of my friends to be French. You know what I mean? Like to just to push me to be like, chill out, dude.
Yeah.
Enjoy life. So
I love it. I love it. That's
yeah.
so awesome, Nate. I really appreciate you. Thanks so much for coming on today. I really feel like I learned a lot about you, and there's some things that I can take away. I'm going to do some more research on, whatever that's called, where you like try to reduce the number of ingredients in your food. You got me excited about that. It's making me rethink like how quickly I try to get back to France. So there's a lot of other things too. I really feel like this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you. Thanks so much, Nate. Really
Yeah,
appreciate
this is fun. Thanks for asking like crazy cool questions. This is probably one of the best podcast interviews I've had in a really long time. So this has been fun.
Wonderful. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll see you soon at Founder Labs. Is there anything you want to plug while we're here?
Um, I'm not. I mean, we talked about Founder Labs. I'm not a hard sell kind of a person, so that's I'm happy with that. If
Founder
anybody needs
Labs
any
is
help, yeah, yeah. The rest of it, you kind of heard. So if you need some help, I'm here for you.
awesome. And you're on Twitter, or where can people find you?
Yeah, Twitter's probably the easiest, but also I think just NateRitter.com. That's probably the fastest way to get in touch. So,
NateRitter.com. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.
thanks, Michael.